There is a moment in every long and complicated family story when patience finally gives way to action. When the quiet watcher in the room picks up a pen, draws a line, and refuses to move from it. For Prince William, that moment arrived in the early weeks of 2026, and when it did, it sent a shockwave through the corridors of Buckingham Palace that nobody inside those walls could have fully prepared for. The decision William made was not announced in a press conference. It did not come with a statement or a carefully crafted social media post. It came in the form of a formal written document, entered permanently into the official palace records, blocking Laura Lopes, Queen Camilla's daughter, from attending the Royal Maundy service at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales on April 2, 2026. And from the moment that letter was filed, the palace has not been the same. To understand why this single decision erupted into one of the most significant internal power shifts the modern British monarchy has seen, you have to start at the very beginning. Not with Laura, and not even with Camilla. You have to start with a pattern. Laura Lopes is, by every formal definition, a private citizen. She holds no royal title. She carries out no official duties on behalf of the crown. She has no working mandate of any description and no constitutional position within the institution. She is the daughter of Queen Camilla from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, which means she carries the Parker Bowles name, not the Windsor bloodline. On paper, her claim to the inner ceremonial spaces of the British monarchy is no greater than that of any member of the general public. And yet, for several years running, Laura Lopes kept appearing, steadily, deliberately, and each time a little further inside the inner circle than the last. In June 2022, Laura attended the Order of the Garter service at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. The Garter service is one of the most exclusive ceremonial occasions in the British calendar. Founded by King Edward III in 1348, it is the oldest and most senior order of chivalry in Britain, reserved for Knights of the Order and working members of the royal family. Getty Images confirmed her attendance, photographing her in a blue ensemble alongside her brother Tom Parker Bowles. She held no Garter appointment, no working role, and no official reason to be there. Her presence was entirely personal, and it was entirely enabled by her mother. Then came September 2022 and the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, the most watched royal event in living memory, with the eyes of the entire world fixed on every face in that room. Laura was positioned among the family. In May 2023, she attended the coronation at Westminster Abbey. Her twin sons, Gus and Louis, stood on the Buckingham Palace balcony as pages of honor during the ceremony, a highly visible, highly symbolic role at the single most photographed moment of the entire occasion. As confirmed by multiple sources, including British headline, UK, those boys were presented to the world as part of the sovereign family's inner ceremonial circle, carrying no royal bloodline and holding no formal position within the institution. In December 2024, as reported by GB News and The Telegraph, Laura joined the royal family for the private Christmas Day service at Sandringham, one of the most intimate and closely guarded gatherings in the royal calendar. In March 2025, she walked openly alongside her mother at the Cheltenham Festival, photographed side by side with Queen Camilla before the cameras. Each appearance said something that words never needed to express. Each one pushed the boundary a fraction further. Each one went unchallenged. Until April 2026, when William decided that enough was enough. But to understand why William chose this particular ceremony as the line he would not allow to be crossed, you have to understand what the Royal Maundy service actually is. This is not a garden party. This is not a banquet where guest lists are flexible and the atmosphere is social. The Royal Maundy is one of the oldest surviving royal ceremonies in Britain, traced back over 8 centuries to a tradition of Christian humility and service. Each year, the reigning monarch personally distributes specially minted Maundy money to a number of recipients equal to the monarch's age, 1 man and 1 woman for every year of the sovereign's life. In 2026, with King Charles turning 77, that meant 77 men and 77 women receiving those coins from his hands directly. The recipients are not chosen for wealth, status, or connection. They are chosen for years of quiet, selfless service to their communities, ordinary people who gave generously of themselves without expectation of recognition. The entire ceremony is built on the foundational principle of humility. It is the crown coming down, not the people being lifted up. It is the most powerful figure in Britain walking among ordinary citizens and honoring them with a personal gesture of gratitude. This year, as confirmed by the official royal family website, the service was held at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales, the UK's smallest ancient cathedral, whose current building dates from the 14th century. It was only the second time in the entire history of the Royal Monde that the service had been held in Wales at all. The significance was enormous. The national attention was focused squarely on it. Now consider what it would mean to place Laura Lopes in that setting. A woman with no royal title, no working role, no official function, and no duty to perform, standing inside a ceremony whose entire foundation is the rejection of inherited privilege and the honoring of genuine service. The symbolism would not merely be uncomfortable. It would be a direct contradiction of everything the ceremony represents. William saw that clearly, and he was not prepared to let it happen. In the weeks leading up to the service, the standard coordination meeting was held at Buckingham Palace to finalize arrangements. When the question of attendance came up, something happened that stopped William's team cold. Representatives from Camilla's office presented Laura's attendance not as a request, not as a proposal to be discussed, but as an established fact. She would be there. It was already decided. The implicit message underneath that assumption carried enormous weight. Camilla is the queen. Her daughter goes where she goes. No one in this building has the standing to say otherwise. When William's team formally raised an objection, the response from Camilla's side was, according to people present in that room, dismissive. There was no serious engagement with the concern. The matter, from their perspective, was simply not open for debate. William sat with that response. He considered exactly who he was dealing with, what their methods were, and what would happen if this were left as a verbal disagreement alone. He had watched this machine operate for decades. He knew precisely what it was capable of. A spoken objection could be denied, softened, or handed to a sympathetic journalist and reframed as William being petty and cruel toward his stepfamily. Verbal disputes leave no trace. They can be rewritten. So William made a decision that Camilla's office had not anticipated. He told his team to put it in writing. A formal document was drafted, signed, and entered permanently into the official palace records. It stated clearly and without ambiguity that Laura Lopes would not be attending the Royal Monde service. But the letter did not stop there. According to sources familiar with its contents, it was structured not merely as a one-time exclusion, but as a formal update to the framework governing attendance at royal ceremonial events. From this point forward, attendance would need to be justified by an actual, defined official role. The question would no longer be whether someone was connected to a working royal. The question would be what official function that person was there to perform. With one document, William had not simply removed Laura from one guest list. He had changed the rules entirely. For those watching from the outside, this might appear to be a sudden and dramatic escalation. It was neither. It was the culmination of something that had been building for a very long time, rooted in experiences that left marks which never fully faded. According to royal author Katie Nichols' 2010 book Harry and William, a source widely referenced and reported on by GB News, Metro, and other outlets, William and Laura had what Nichols described as terrible fights during their teenage years. William would blame Camilla for the pain caused to his mother, Princess Diana. Laura would fire back, telling him directly that his father had ruined her life. These were not mild disagreements between two young people navigating a complicated family situation. They were raw, bitter confrontations over the wreckage that the adults around them had created. Those fights eventually subsided. In 2011, William chose Laura's daughter Eliza as a bridesmaid at his wedding to Catherine. The world read that as a gesture of peace, a blended family choosing to move forward. And perhaps it was. But carrying the appearance of peace is not the same as carrying peace itself. Some things that break do not fully mend. They simply become quiet. What William was also carrying, in the years that followed, was the knowledge of how information had been handled during some of the most vulnerable moments of his life. In his memoir Spare, Prince Harry documented how Charles and Camilla's communications operation had functioned, how stories were managed, how narratives were shaped, and how, in Harry's account, damaging information about William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan had been planted in the press in ways that benefited Charles and Camilla's public standing at the direct expense of both princes. Harry wrote that when he and William confronted Charles about it, Charles reacted with fury and dismissed their concerns as paranoia, even as Harry maintained that journalists inside actual newsrooms had confirmed where those stories originated. Whether every detail of Harry's account is verifiable or not, what it reveals is the depth of distrust that had accumulated on William's side over many years. The Manda letter was not the action of a man reacting impulsively to a minor provocation. It was the action of a man who had watched a pattern repeat itself for a very long time, who understood exactly what tools were available to those on the other side of the argument, and who had decided, with great deliberateness, to create a record that could not be manipulated. When Camilla discovered that the exclusion order had been formally logged into the palace records, the reaction from her side was, by all accounts, severe. She understood immediately what the document meant, not just for this ceremony, but for the broader position she had spent years carefully constructing. Camilla had not arrived at her current standing without enormous effort and considerable strategic intelligence. She had worked patiently and persistently for decades to build her public image, to normalize her place beside Charles, and to weave her private family gradually into the fabric of royal life. Laura's growing presence at major events was not accidental. It was the result of years of quiet, deliberate work. That work had now been challenged in a way that bypassed every avenue of influence Camilla had built. She went directly to Charles. She framed what William had done not as a procedural dispute but as an act of personal humiliation, a formal, permanent document that disparaged her daughter and dismissed the loyalty her children had shown through decades of public criticism and family turbulence. She asked the king to exercise his authority and reverse the order. Charles, according to insiders, said nothing. He did not intervene. He did not pick up the telephone. He did not offer Camilla even a gesture of support or solidarity. He withdrew into silence, and that silence was the most complete answer he could have given. The reason Charles could not move was visible to anyone who understood the realities of the moment. To reverse William's formal written order would be to publicly undermine the man who was, at that point, carrying the operational weight of the monarchy while Charles received treatment for cancer. It would signal to every courtier, every diplomat, and every department within the palace that the heir's formal institutional decisions could be undone by a private marital conversation. It would hand the monarchy's critics precisely the narrative they had always been waiting for. Princess Anne, who completed 474 royal engagements in 2024 alone, more than any other working royal, and whose commitment to duty is without question the most uncompromising in the family, was aligned with William completely. Charles looked at the landscape around him and chose the institution. He had made the opposite mistake before, at an immeasurable cost. He would not make a comparable mistake in reverse. On the morning of April 2, 2026, the yeomen of the guard processed into St. Asaph Cathedral as they have done at Manda services for centuries. The state trumpeters sounded their fanfare. Welsh choirs filled the ancient stone building with music commissioned for the occasion. King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived together, and 77 men and 77 women, people from Wales and other dioceses across the United Kingdom, chosen for years of quiet, selfless service to their communities, received their Manda gifts from the king's own hands, as confirmed by the official royal family website. The service unfolded with the dignity it has carried across 8 centuries. And Laura Lopes was not there. Her absence was not announced. There was no public statement, no official explanation, no press release. She simply was not present. And in the world of royal ceremony, where presence is meaning and absence is language, that quiet missing name spoke louder than anything that had been said behind closed doors. What William did in the weeks before that service was not simply the action of a man settling a personal grievance. It was something much more structural than that, and far more consequential for the institution going forward. The letter he wrote establishes a precedent. It is now a permanent document in the official palace record, and precedents in royal institutions carry weight that extends far beyond the moment that created them. Every future request, every future assumption about attendance, every future instance of someone connected to the royal family through relationship rather than role-seeking access to ceremonial spaces, all of it will now be measured against what William put into writing in early 2026. The framework has changed. The question is no longer one of personal connection. It is one of official function. And that distinction is one of the most important lines a constitutional monarchy can draw. There is also something worth understanding about the timing. King Charles has been dealing with a cancer diagnosis, and William has been carrying an increasingly significant share of the institutional responsibilities of the monarchy. He has done so without complaint and without seeking public credit for it. But the decisions he has been making in that role have been the decisions of someone who is not merely keeping the seat warm. They have been the decisions of a man who is shaping, with intention and care, the institution he will one day lead. William is not waiting for a crown to give him permission to act like the future king. He is already acting like one. None of this exists in isolation. It cannot be separated from the full weight of history that William carries: the loss of his mother when he was 15 years old, the years of watching the institution navigate the consequences of choices made long before he had any say in them, the knowledge he accumulated about how information was managed and how narratives were shaped at his and his family's expense. It also cannot be separated from a fundamental question about what the monarchy is and what it is for. The Royal Maundy service, more than almost any other event in the royal calendar, is a statement of purpose. It says that the crown exists not to elevate those around it through proximity, but to serve the people who depend on it. It says that access to the institution must be earned through duty, not inherited through relationship. That principle, in William's view, is not negotiable. It is not a formality to be set aside when it becomes personally inconvenient. It is the thing that makes the institution worth defending in the first place. Laura Lopes is a private individual. She has, by most accounts, led a dignified and largely private life given the extraordinary circumstances she was born into. The argument here has never been about her personally. It has been about what her presence at a succession of the monarchy's most sacred and exclusive events was signaling about where the lines of the institution were drawn, and who had the authority to draw them.